welcome to the very first 2020 upload of the channel. I'm Nee B, and welcome to all the new subscribers. I give you all instant through the screen good luck and intentions this year. Certainly trying to get out at least one upload out once a month. Now this tantalising little tale is all regarding the moon landings and why I believe cannot be walked on by any human being in an outer space, just faked and filmed in our very real earthly inner one. I would like to tell you a story that has been forgotten, the story of a Cindereallarth. Now I didn't come to bore you with a Cinderella story, oh no, as this is no fairy tale, my friends. Cinderella can mean someone or something that is given little attention or care to, especially less than they deserve. Now NASA knew full well that the Apollo lunar landing missions were never going to happen in any way, shape or form in an outer space, just simply an inner one. They obviously took steps to make sure that it would be as realistic as humanly possible, to be as convincing as anything before it, and never really risk the lives or the chance of ever losing any person, human, astronaut, in a so-called outer space. Just simply write them off here on a plain Earth inner space instead, in fires or maybe framing them in the public eye for something. They needed a place of interest, a place that looked alien enough and realistic enough to fool the masses. And of course, my friends, they had one in Arizona. So into fruition, the steps are made. Redundancies are built into the earthbound spacecrafts, and the astronauts or knots and technicians alike spent hours, many hours, simulating, filming missions, recording footage of them, collecting rocks and taking and collecting samples of soils, all right here on the plain Earth. All before the so-called outer space voyage. There is practice, friends, and there is practice. This was done over many years. This was going to be used. So very much earthbound mission planners used simulations to anticipate as many so-called aspects of our lunar mission as possible, going so far in 1967 as to actually recreating the moon itself from a 3D point of view. They built this in northern Arizona because the Arizonian landscaping was part of the astrogeology research program, a joint undertaking between NASA and of course the USGS, and thus help stage the missions. The sites are located in Flagstaff near Cottonwood, in the Verde Valley, and at Grand Canyon National Park, Sunset Crater National Monument, Meter Crater, and Meridian Crater, and locations also on the Navajo Reservation. But the program's main site was a place called Cinder Field, an area where ballistic cinders covered the natural Cray landscape following the Sunset volcanic crater's eruption way back in 1064. To make the moon so moon-like, NASA added craters to the site with dynamite. To make each crater, a site was excavated and thus filled with a mixture of dynamite and ammonium nitrates. And after some test explosions, the necessary steps were used to collaborate how much power was needed to make a crater of a certain size. And then the real blasting began. The Cinder Lake Crater Field number 1 initially contained 47 craters with diameters of 5 to 40 feet. It was expanded a lot later that year to an 800 square foot field with 143 craters in total. Over 300 pounds of dynamite and over 13,000 pounds of ammonium nitrate were used to blast the craters from the black, lightweight cinder debris. It was used so the astronauts could identify craters and determining their location in our so-called alien lunar landscape. The astronauts also filmed using geologic hand tools and testing scientific equipment packages and various lunar vehicles. None of them, bar one, were geologists or scientists. All actors playing those parts. An Apollo lunar module ascent stage was also constructed and thus placed on a ramp to give it the approximate height off the so-called lunar analog surface. All, friends, the necessary ingredients needed to make for a very convincing, world-changing special effects movie. But they were not yet done, friends. NASA still decided to build a larger 1,200 square foot test field with 354 craters. The new location was selected because of the dark ballistic cinder over there. This actually covered the lighter clay beds so that blasting craters would create distinctive light-coloured ejecta, including the light rays, and thus filmed. Several sets of explosions in sequence created craters with overlapping ejector blankets to mimic different ages. Just like they could say exist on the moon, which they do not. Some rare photographs. Apollo 8 and Apollo 13 astronaut Jim Lovell at a lava squeeze up near Sunset Crater. Apollo 11 astronaut Neil Armstrong on a mule follows USGS geologist John Wilhelms along the Bright Angel Trail Grand Canyon in May 1964. Apollo 17 astronauts Jack Smith and Ron Evans training in the very lunar rover vehicle at Sunset Crater in 1972. Apollo 11 astronaut Buzz Aldrin at a viewpoint along the Bright Angel Trail Grand Canyon 1964. Now, with all of this, my friends, almost 10 years of footage and the evidenced real practice on a so-called alien landscape that was really just set in Arizona, USA, and convincingly creating the very surface that they would be walking on in years to follow, as this movie was always going to be staged. They had the perfect place, the perfect equipment, the perfect landscapes, and just needed the perfect director or directors for it. In 1962, we had the very famous JFK moon speech. We have the Cinder Lake Crater Moon landscape experiments during the mid to late 1960s. We have the inventor of the satellite himself, Mr. Arthur C. Clarke, who actually wrote the novel 2001: A Space Odyssey, which was then adapted into a film with Stanley Kubrick in 1968. here they both are with NASA officials. They had ultimately worldwide successful indoctrination almost a year before the history-making ultimate place where nobody had been before, outer space, landing safely on it, returning all the way back from the terraformed moon in the historic year of 1969. And thus, in all the coming follow-up year missions, they're all fakes, and 12 or so, or should I say 12 so-called US astronauts, all men, had apparently walked on the moon between 1969 and December 1972. The real truth, my friends, here, as always, all the big parties know now what they had realised long ago. We had the right technology to see it for real. The Earth is very much flat, no matter how high that anybody gets to. But either way here, they've got a massive big problem to sort out, because the public will want to see some sort of evidence that will prove that they were there, were walking, and that had actually landed there on the moon. They had got there safely, and they had got all the way back safely. But it did not take much convincing, because some actually believed that they heard it on the radio, and others believed that they had arrived on the moon because they had read it in the papers, the tabloids. But yet the footage broadcasted to the world, when one looks at it as a free-thinking adult individual, it does not look very good. What do we see when you watch it? The original 1969 first moon landing, where the story begins. Everything after it is just circumstantial. It's filmed, it's shot in a very grainy, second-hand, black and white, delayed, distorted footage. It's awful, knowing that they had full-colour video equipment with them on board, but didn't think to take a telescope with them. Yet this is all it took for the masses to believe that they were there on it, 237,000 miles away, in vast outer space, descending the lander perfectly for the first time, and walking around, bouncing around in the alien environment for the first time, collecting rocks and soil samples, filming it all, driving buggies, and obviously making phone calls to the Earth using some sort of space G, before blasting off again for the first time, docking in vast outer space for the first time, and coming all the way back home for the first time. Yet, looking at the astronauts when they first got back does not fill me with any such confidence that they had actually achieved this final frontier beyond any type of comprehension. Very much the opposite, that they had done anything of the sort, as they all quit NASA straight away anyway. I would have looked rather happy and excited being safe and alive, having survived the scariest journey to and from an alien planet. You would want to tell the world over and over and over about it. I try to live each day as a blessing to be alive, living for the truth on the plain earth, being very happy and content, and try very hard being a very positive influence to the people around me. I mean, come on folks, look at what you had accomplished in the name of mankind. But this, when you watch it, turned out to be very much a stress conference and not press, and did not happen for real. Then ask yourself this fact, friends. If you knew that you did not go, and it was all just a movie of science fiction and make-believe, all just acting the part, and you were sat there with who knows what threats or sanctions held against you or your family, your loved ones. It's all just very, very sad watching them in pain. Not very good acting, and certainly not a total euphoric excitement environment. They did not even see any stars at the time, yet the night sky is full of them. All of the so-called moon rocks and samples brought back have all been lost, or end up being some type of petrified wood, not even rock. All the trajectory footage and data had all been lost too. And it's all just a huge problem and very much a painful process to build it all back up again. But next week, NASA is apparently landing on Mars and can see with these satellites Jupiter's so-called moons right up to its gases and supervolcanoes. But one secret, friends, is Capricorn 1, a Hollywood movie made in 1977, is all about NASA and the people involved faking a real mission to Mars, and how easy it is to fool the masses into believing it was really happening, and that they were there and that had actually made that distance. But the reality is much less spectacular. Maybe this is the reason that he was framed for murder, because he knew that this is really how they faked the moon missions and was going to spill the beans. Maybe not, that's for something else. But I do encourage all of you to watch this movie for your own conclusions, as its banner headline does state in plain English, would you be shocked to find that the greatest moment of our recent history may not have happened at all? Well, actually, no. We know. I mean, try and watch A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon and part 2 of it, all showing in depth the lengths and breadths that they have gone to, the powers that be, and will ultimately go to try and stop the truth from coming out. The global aerospace industry was worth $838 billion in 2017. So imagine, friends, what you think it's worth today in 2020. We will cover volcanoes in an upcoming RFEFP upload, and also giants, as we always speak the truth on this channel. No small steps or giant leaps, just very real giant footsteps. My friends on the plain Earth, they simply can't leave inner space. That's the truth, and they know this now, and they knew this back then. And thanks to the surviving few little gems of information left by certain well-placed people in the know, giving interviews, breaking the silence, and helping spread the truth. And thanks to the internet, we do have now the evidence needed. The raw, unedited footage of NASA doing that in low Earth orbit. Our very real inner space. The very condemning footage trying to recreate an image of a globed Earth from actually inside it, using very clever angles and techniques to get the disingenuous picture and pictures. If you just connect the dots, the reason why, my friends, really is plain and flat. Thus, coming the next few years, they have gotten better and better at making it as unbelievable as possible, with the very latest state-of-the-art digital photographical technology and the television. There is a so-called never-seen-before footage and audio recordings of Apollo 11 2019 history documentary that was released last year to sort of re-indoctrinate the masses into believing that it happened in 69. And I can sort of guess why they made it and released it, as it looks very updated but doesn't really have anything new to offer. But Rotten Tomato rates it at 99%. Yet there's no mention of Cinder though, at all. And I think we all know why, don't we? Yet, it does not look like the same place today, friends, the Cindereallarth. No. It has not been given any such preservation rights, so looks like nothing had ever happened there at all. Out of sight, and clearly out of mind. The moon, she is the light of the night that circles with her own magical minute right. We have covered the moon and her very special part of the equilibrium in part 2 of the RFEFP series. Please check it out afterwards if you wish to. You're all old enough to make up your own minds, friends, and free to believe in whatever you so wish to. Just don't be fooled by CGI and make-believe Cinderella fairy tales. Trust your senses, and no matter how high you get, no matter what level you're walking on, sailing on, or flying on, the Earth will always be flat. The moon is the light of the night, not a ball where you can walk tall. Always inner space, never outer space. Thank you for your time and your patience with me. I hope you found it interesting. Hit the sub if you're new to the channel, but you don't need to worry about hitting the bell, as these uploads are always going to be child friendly and always free to use for all and by anybody. The next RFEFP upload will be with us within the next coming weeks. Probably 2. I'll see you in that upload. You take care.